County 911. Where's your emergency?
Ma'am, I'm at 39 Hillsborough Street. I can't find my baby. She was outside playing, and I came out here after cooking dinner a little bit, and I'm looking for her, but I don't see her nowhere.
Every missing child case begins the same way. Someone calls 911. Within minutes, deputies respond. Search teams gather. Volunteers arrive. Everyone hopes the child is still alive. That was exactly how the morning of June 30th, 2026, began in Aiken County, South Carolina. A 4-year-old girl named Javeayah Harris had been reported missing. Local deputies, investigators with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, FBI agents, K-9 teams, drones, and volunteers quickly joined the search. Roads were checked, neighborhoods were canvassed, and officers began interviewing relatives and neighbors. At first, nothing suggested this case would be different from countless other missing child investigations. But as detectives worked to establish a timeline, they encountered a problem. The information they were receiving didn't fit together. Instead of leading them toward a missing child, the evidence began pointing in another direction. Investigators started asking a question no one expected so early in the case. When had anyone outside the family last seen Javeayah alive? The answer would change the entire investigation. According to investigators, Javeayah may have died weeks before she was ever reported missing. If that allegation is proven in court, it would mean the search that captured an entire community had begun long after the child was already gone. This is the story of Javeayah Harris, a case that began as a desperate search for a missing 4-year-old and quickly became a homicide investigation. Before investigators questioned timelines or examined evidence, Javeayah Harris was simply a 4-year-old little girl. She lived with her parents, Michaela Herring and Javeayah Harris, in Aiken County, South Carolina. From the outside, there was nothing to suggest the family would soon become the focus of a major criminal investigation. Like many children her age, Javeayah's life should have revolved around simple routines, playing with toys, watching cartoons, and feeling safe at home. For young children, home is the center of their world. They rely entirely on the adults responsible for their care, and they have little ability to ask for help when something goes wrong behind closed doors. That dependence is one reason cases involving very young children can be especially difficult to investigate. Unlike older children, they often leave behind few witnesses, few records, and few opportunities for someone outside the family to notice that something is wrong. As detectives would later discover, establishing Javeayah's recent timeline would become one of the biggest challenges in the case. On the morning of June 30th, emergency dispatchers received the report that Javeayah Harris was missing. For law enforcement, a missing 4-year-old is treated as an emergency from the very beginning. Deputies responded to the family's home, while detectives began interviewing relatives and neighbors. Search teams were deployed, drones surveyed the area, K-9 units searched for scent trails, and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division joined the investigation alongside the FBI. Public alerts spread quickly. Local media interrupted regular programming, and photographs of Javeayah circulated across social media as community members shared every update they could find. At that stage, investigators had one objective: find the child as quickly as possible. But while search teams worked outside, detectives concentrated on something else inside the home. They were establishing a timeline. When had Javeayah last been seen? Who had seen her? Could those accounts be independently verified? At first, the inconsistencies appeared minor. Small differences in recollection are common during stressful situations. But as detectives compared statements with other evidence, those differences became increasingly difficult to explain. The investigation was no longer focused only on where Javeayah might be. It was becoming equally important to determine when she had last been alive. As detectives continued reconstructing Javeayah's timeline, one problem became impossible to ignore. No one outside the family could reliably confirm seeing her in the days leading up to the missing person report. That absence of independent sightings immediately raised concerns. In most missing child investigations, detectives can establish a clear starting point by speaking with teachers, neighbors, relatives, or family friends. In Javeayah's case, that proved far more difficult. Investigators reviewed the family's statements alongside witness interviews and available records, looking for anything that could confirm when the 4-year-old had last been alive. According to court documents, the information they gathered did not support the timeline they had been given. That discovery changed the investigation. Detectives were no longer focused solely on locating a missing child. They also had to determine whether the reported disappearance had happened when the family claimed it did. As more evidence was collected, investigators began considering a possibility they hoped never to encounter in a case involving a young child. Javeayah may have died long before the 911 call was ever made. If that was true, weeks of the child's life had gone completely unaccounted for. The investigation now centered on one question: what had happened during that missing time? While search efforts continued, detectives quietly began testing every part of the family's account. Statements were compared with physical evidence, digital records, and witness interviews. According to investigators, the more information they collected, the more difficult it became to reconcile the reported timeline with the evidence. By this stage, the investigation was moving in two directions at once. Publicly, officers were still searching for a missing 4-year-old. Privately, detectives were examining whether they were dealing with a crime that had occurred weeks earlier. That distinction became public on July 4th. During a press conference, Sheriff Marty Sawyer announced that investigators believed Javeayah had likely died about a month before she was reported missing. The announcement shocked both the community and the volunteers who had spent days searching for the little girl. The case they believed they were helping solve had already taken a very different direction. Later that same day, authorities arrested Javeayah's mother, Javeayah Harris, and her father, Javeayah Harris. Both were charged with homicide by child abuse. Harris was also charged with filing a false police report. Those arrests marked a turning point in the investigation. But they did not answer the central question: what had happened inside the family's home during the weeks investigators say Javeayah was already dead? Following the arrests, investigators began outlining what they believe happened in the weeks before Javeayah was reported missing. Much of that information comes from arrest warrants and court documents filed after the investigation shifted from a missing child case to a homicide inquiry. According to investigators, Javeayah suffered a fatal head injury inside the family's home. Prosecutors allege that the injury was not accidental and that no one contacted emergency services to seek medical help. Instead, investigators believe efforts were made to conceal the child's death rather than report it. Those allegations now form the basis of the criminal case against Javeayah's parents. As with any criminal prosecution, they remain allegations unless proven in court. After establishing what they believe happened inside the home, detectives turned their attention to the days that followed. Their objective was no longer to determine how Javeayah disappeared. It was to reconstruct every step taken after investigators believe she died. To do that, detectives reviewed phone records, digital evidence, surveillance footage where available, witness statements, and other physical evidence collected during the investigation. According to court filings, those pieces gradually formed a timeline that investigators believe showed an effort to conceal the crime. Exactly how prosecutors intend to present that evidence will become clearer as the case moves through court. For now, much of what is publicly known comes from investigative documents rather than sworn testimony. By the second week of the investigation, detectives believed they had identified where to continue their search. According to court records, evidence collected during the investigation led authorities away from the family's home and toward the Cedar Creek Reservoir, approximately 100 miles from Aiken. Recovery teams searched both the water and the surrounding shoreline. Days later, authorities announced they had recovered human remains. The remains were later identified as those of 4-year-old Javeayah Harris. For investigators, the discovery confirmed what they had already concluded during the course of the investigation. The missing child case had become a homicide investigation. Sheriff Marty Sawyer later described it as one of the most difficult investigations his office had ever handled. He also shared a painful reality with the public. Because of the condition of the remains, investigators believed they might never be able to recover Javeayah completely. Even after that discovery, the investigation was far from over. Recovering Javeayah's remains answered one question. It did not answer every question prosecutors would eventually need to prove in court. Detectives continued collecting evidence, interviewing witnesses, and refining the timeline they believe explains what happened in the weeks before the 911 call. Following their arrests, Javeayah Herring and Javeayah Harris appeared in court on charges of homicide by child abuse. Herring also faces a charge of filing a false police report after authorities alleged that she falsely reported her daughter missing. Both defendants have pleaded not guilty. As the case moves through the court system, prosecutors are expected to present the evidence gathered during the investigation, while the defense will have the opportunity to challenge those findings. Like every criminal case, the outcome will ultimately depend on what can be proven in court. Much of what has been released so far comes from arrest warrants and investigative documents. Additional evidence may emerge as witnesses testify, and the case proceeds to trial. For now, many questions remain unanswered.
Your bond was denied on the murder charges of homicide by child abuse. I do find that you probably qualify for a court-appointed attorney. You need to contact the public defender's office, and that number is on the paperwork. Your first court appearance is scheduled for August 28th at 9 a.m. Your second appearance is October 23rd at 10 a.m. Initial and sign where it's highlighted yellow. You will get a copy of everything you sign. Victim services. If appropriate, based on you being in the jail, if you can comply with DSS, that's a condition. All right, based on the totality of the circumstances, I do find that you're a flight risk and a danger to the community, and I'm going to deny your bond. Thank you. He's got that now. I'll give it to you.
Back full, and nobody does it. You've been watching that with Javeayah Harris, 22 years old, making a court appearance there on a destruction and desecration of human remains charge in front of the judge there. You're watching as we queue up there in the box the second court appearance. That is for Javeayah Harris's father, Javeayah Harris. And that is what we are watching happen now. I can tell you, though, in just the last few minutes you watched as that court appearance was happening, this was unlike we saw over the weekend where the judge was unable to set a bond in a murder charge. This judge saying in this charge here this afternoon that she found Javeayah Herring a danger to the community and denied her bond. Let's look at this is Javeayah Harris now making his court appearance on that same charge.
You can state your name for the record, please.
Javeayah Harris.
Mr. Harris, you have a right to a jury trial. You have a right and an obligation to attend all court proceedings. If you do not show for a court date, a bench warrant may be issued for your arrest. You may be tried in your absence, or you may face additional charges. If your charges are dismissed or you are found not guilty, you have a right to have them expunged, which means they will come off your record. You have a right to represent yourself, hire an attorney, or see if you qualify for a court-appointed attorney, which we will start in just a moment, but you will need to contact the public defender's office yourself to see if you qualify. This charge will be heard in general sessions, therefore you're entitled to what is called a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing does not determine guilt or innocence, but determines if probable cause exists to move forward with your case. If you would like a preliminary hearing, you need to submit the form I'm going to give you, notice of preliminary hearing, within 10 days of today. You're charged with destruction of human remains, which carries a mandatory 1 year up to 10 years and will be heard in general sessions court. The first set of forms is a checklist of the rights I gave you. The next set of forms is more information about your rights to an attorney. Do you want me to see if I think you qualify for a court-appointed attorney?
No, ma'am.
You're going to hire an attorney?
I have a lawyer already.
Okay. Your first court appearance is scheduled for August 28th at 9 a.m. Your second appearance is October 23rd at 10 a.m. Initial and sign where it's highlighted yellow. You will get a copy of everything you sign. Victim services.
Asking that he complies with the DSS.
Yes, ma'am. You hear me?
Yeah, you're to comply with DSS requirements. Based on the totality of the circumstances, I do find that you're a flight risk and a danger to the community, and I'm going to deny your bond.
You were just watching Javeayah Harris and Javeayah Harris making their first court appearance on this new charge, destruction of human remains. The sheriff announcing that this morning in a press conference there in Aiken County. They believe now, we've learned in a warrant, that little Javeayah Harris died on June 8th, 2026. Parents there then, after not reporting a head injury, failing to call 911, getting the little girl help, used some type of chemical to dissolve the best they could her body, take her to a reservoir, and pour her, the sheriff said, into the water there. They have used DNA in the remains that they have been able to find to link them back to these two parents. The sheriff saying today that Cedar Creek Reservoir was where they found her remains. Said they were extensive and deliberate efforts made to destroy and conceal evidence and hide Javeayah's death. In 37 years, the sheriff says he's never heard or seen anything so horrific as this case, saying that he will not call them mom, he will not call them dad, father, or mother. They do not deserve that title. Again, you're watching an exclusive video just now of the first court appearance, if you will, for the parents of Javeayah Harris. That is Javeayah Harris and Javeayah Harris. now charged with destruction of human remains. It is a charge that carries up to 10 years in prison. Unlike the court appearance that we saw over the weekend, this was not a judge who simply could not set a bond. A bond here was denied because they were, quote, a flight risk and a danger to the community. We will have much more on this story coming up on the news at 4 o'clock. Thank you for watching.
When Javeayah Harris was first reported missing, an entire community believed they were searching for a little girl who still had a chance to come home. Volunteers gave their time. Law enforcement committed significant resources. Neighbors shared her photograph in the hope that someone, somewhere, had seen her. Within days, investigators concluded they had been searching for a child who, according to the evidence, had already been gone for weeks. It is the kind of case that inevitably leaves people asking whether anything could have been done differently, whether there were warning signs that went unnoticed, whether someone might have recognized that something was wrong sooner. Those questions may never have clear answers. The court will determine whether the evidence presented is sufficient to prove the charges against Javeayah's parents. But one fact will never change. A 4-year-old girl lost her life. She will never grow older, never begin school, never discover who she might have become. Whatever the outcome of the criminal case, that loss cannot be undone. If this case has one lasting lesson, it is how easily the suffering of a young child can remain hidden from the outside world. Behind ordinary neighborhoods and familiar routines, there are sometimes realities that no one sees until it is far too late. Javeayah Harris deserves to be remembered not only as the subject of a criminal investigation, but as a child whose life mattered. Thank you for watching.